everyone, welcome to today's video. Today I am talking about how much mermaid tails cost when you are a mermaid living in Australia. Now I figured this merited a whole video on its own because, as you probably know, Australia is a ginormous continental island and generally it costs a lot more for things to be imported here because they have to go over the sea. So this means that most things, including mermaid tails, can be a lot more expensive for us, so I thought I would break down some of the top and my favourite mermaid tail companies and how much their products cost to get them to Australia. So I have picked 5 mermaid tail companies to talk about today. This is by no means all of them, obviously, but I've just picked some of the most popular and a couple of my personal favourites as well. Now the tails I'm talking about today will include the monofin costs unless mentioned specifically. I will be talking about monofins at the end with their own costs. I will also be talking about the shipping costs for apparel from all of these companies. A lot of them do ship their apparel from the manufacturer directly, so the shipping costs are a bit different. I haven't collated what it costs when you get a tail and apparel, so you may have to do that on your own. Sometimes I think it can sort of charge you double if they're coming from 2 separate places. I don't own tails from all of these companies, so make sure you do your own research before you purchase them. I won't be talking about pros and cons of any of these companies at all, so make sure you look up reviews if you're going to purchase one. This is purely about the price, exchange rate, and shipping costs. The other thing you can look at if you're an Aussie is a freight forwarding service. I personally have not used one of these, so I can't recommend any, but if you give it a Google, I'm sure you can find some info on them. But basically, that's where you can order something from a US website and get it shipped to the freight forwarding service in the US, and then you pay a fee and they ship it to you in Australia. I'm not sure if this really works out to be cheaper for some of the options, but for places that don't ship to Australia, like Vancouver Mermaid and Sparkle Girl Costumes, and I'm sure there's many others, if they don't actually ship outside of North America, then this could be a good option if you really want one of those tails. If you want more information on any of these tails or you want to purchase one, there will be links in the description to all of the companies and where you can purchase their items from. I will be doing a little bit of math today, and I apologise if it might be a little bit wonky. I did notice that some of the tails add their taxes at checkout, so the prices might be a little bit off, but you'll get the general gist of what they'll cost. So starting off with probably the most popular mermaid tail company at the moment, Finfolk Productions. If you don't know Finfolk Productions, they have been around forever. They originally started with silicone tails and then eventually moved on to doing fabric tail releases. At the moment, they tend to do, I believe, 3 or 4 drops of new designs every year in limited batches, and then they also do a tail of the month every month that has an unlimited amount. They have 2 types of tails primarily. They do a discovery fabric tail and a signature fabric tail. So I'm going to be talking about both of these because they have drastically different shipping costs. I also have a little sheet here with all my numbers on it, so I apologise if I'm looking down. Finfolk does offer free shipping codes occasionally. The whole free shipping code does not work for international orders, but when they run free shipping codes, they generally run a $70 off shipping code for international mermaids. Sometimes I think this applies at checkout, and sometimes you have to email them and get it retroactively refunded to your account, so you may still have to fork out the amount to start with, but if that's something you really want to keep an eye out for, it could be worth giving it a shot. So to start with, the Finfolk Discovery, which is the tail with the smaller flukes, the regular versions of these cost $215 US, and the shipping is $92 US. So the total for one of those, including shipping, is $307 US, which at the time of filming, the exchange rate brings that to about 466 Australian dollars to get a Discovery tail and have it shipped and be at your front door. For the Finfolk Signature tail, I'm basing this off of the current tail of the month, which was the Demeter, I believe, with all fins, cost $785 US, plus the shipping is $185 US. So the total for a signature of that style is $970 US, which brings it to $1,475 Australian dollars. Now with the signatures, you can get them with no fins, limited fins, or all fins, and I'm not sure if the designs change the shipping cost. It may be based on weight, but that is a rough guide, $185 US shipping for a signature. They come with vinyl as well, so they're a little bit hefty. And then the apparel for Finfolk. This was a interesting find, which I believe maybe is new. So looking at a rash guard, which costs $72 US, the shipping's only $7. It used to be way more expensive, but someone else in my local pod discovered this recently, that it was very cheap. So that brings it to $79 US for a rashie and shipping, which is 120 Australian dollars. I did put in 3 apparel items to see if it jumped up significantly, but for 3 different apparel items, the shipping went up to $18 US. So that's still very good. So if you can't afford a tail but you really like the designs, maybe some apparel will be for you. Onto the next company. The next one I'm talking about is Mertailor. Mertailor has also been around for a very long time and is one of the top most popular tail companies at the moment. They're probably known best for their fantasy fin monofins, which are their own exclusive design. They come in, I believe, 5 different styles, and their tail skins are primarily made to match those monofins, but they also do make guppy tails, which are made for the Linden monofin. So if you're looking at one of the Mertailor Whimsy skins, which the one I looked at is designed for the Fantasy Fin 1, that tail with all fins costs $924 US, and the shipping is $142 US. So that brings for that tail up to $1,066 US, which is 1,621 Australian dollars. Now I did check for this one, I forgot to do it for FinFolks, sorry, but if you have no fins for this style of tail, the shipping is still the same cost. I have a feeling that maybe Mertailor sets their shipping per style of item because it was quite different looking at a guppy tail, and I don't think the weight would be that much difference, plus the weight between like no fins and all fins could be quite different because some of their tails have a lot of fins. But anyway, that's just a rough guide on that style of Whimsy tail. For their guppy tails, they are $99 US, no fins or anything, that's not an option. The shipping is only $39 US. So that brings it to 138, which the conversion is 210 Australian dollars. So this could be a really good option if you're starting out. This is probably one of the few places you can get a beginner's tail for like 200 bucks, including the shipping. For Mertailor apparel, if you're looking at a rash guard, they cost about $60 US. The shipping is $133 US. So that costs you $193 US, which is 293 Australian dollars for a rash guard. I tried this with 3 items in my cart as well, and the shipping went up to $150 US. So it did go up a little bit with each item, but not a crazy amount, I guess. But that's a lot to spend on apparel. The next company I'm talking about is Whimsydale Mermaid Tails. These are an Australian tail maker. I'm so glad that we have at least one. As far as I know, Whimsydale is the only Australian fabric tail maker on the market currently. We have had some in the past, but they all have fizzled out, unfortunately. It's very hard in Australia. It's very hard in general to make money in a small business, but Australia just seems to be really, really tricky for it. I think a lot of international mermaids don't want to buy from Australia because of the costs, which is just a shame. But anyway, Whimsydale could be a great option for you because the shipping is so much better. Whimsydale offers their tails for a bunch of different monofins, so you can get basically any of their designs in whichever monofin you prefer, and it looks like they're sort of releasing new designs every month at the moment. If you are looking at one of their tails, I looked at the Tetra tail. They do come in a few different styles for different monofins, but most of them are generally kind of the same amount of fins and styles and things. So the Tetra tail costs 500 Australian dollars and has free shipping. So there you go. I couldn't quite figure out if their free shipping was over a certain rate or if it was for all tails. I'm not sure. So you might have to play around, but definitely at least for their Tetra tails, seems like free shipping is the go. For their apparel, if you're looking at a rash guard, they're 120 Australian dollars and shipping is 10 bucks. So $130 for a rash guard. And if you put in 3 apparel items, you are still looking at $10 shipping. So that's good. If you wanted to stock up, you could grab a whole bunch and you're not going to pay extra in shipping. These guys get an extra point because they're Australian. Go check them out because we need to give more love to our Australian businesses. Number 4 is Two Oceans Mermaid Tails. These guys are based in South Africa. These guys have a bunch of different designs that are made for different monofins, and they also do custom tails for a very reasonable price. I am currently waiting on a custom tail to arrive, and I am very excited to be able to show that off to you guys, but obviously that will be in a different video. These guys make the list because they are surprisingly affordable for an international company. If you are looking at one of their flow tails with all the fins, it's 350 Australian dollars. And shipping is 47 Australian dollars. So that brings a total for this style of tail, 397 Australian dollars. This is a really good price for a tail with like an extended fluke and fins and everything. And their custom designs are not much more expensive. So definitely recommend looking into them. For their apparel, if you're looking at a rash guard, they're 77 Australian dollars and shipping is 51. So that brings your total to 128 Australian dollars. If you are looking at 3 apparel items, the shipping still stays the same at $51. When I ordered my tail as well, they were doing a free shipping code, so that's something you could look out for if you want to save a little bit more money as well. And the last tail company I'm going to be talking about today is a classic. I didn't forget them. It's FinFun Mermaid Tails. These guys are at the bottom of my list now. They used to be a really, really good beginner, cheap option. They were my first tail. There were a lot of people I know first tail, but they used to have an Australian outlet. Like, you used to be able to buy Fin Fun tails in like Harvey Norman and stuff. They don't anymore. You can't buy them in Australia, so you have to get them from their US website, and it makes them almost one of the most expensive for the style of tails. The shipping costs, it's bad. So if you're looking at one of their basic tails with a monofin, so this is the only one I'm talking about that has the monofin included because their monofin is made for their tail. The tail and the monofin together is 131 Australian dollars. Shipping is $202. So that brings your total for a very basic tail like this to $367, which I just personally, I don't think that's worth it for a style like this. If you're looking at one of their tail skins with no monofin, that costs 77 Australian dollars, but shipping is still 195 Australian dollars. So you're looking at 299 Australian for just the fabric skin, and these are not super high quality. They don't release new designs very often. I wouldn't recommend, but there's the information if you want to get one. They do have elite tails now, which are more similar to like the Finfolk tails with the vinyl casings, big flukes and that sort of thing. And I like these a little more, but they're still too expensive for me. So the elite tail that I looked at was $585. Shipping was $277 Australian dollars. So the total brought it up to 949 Australian dollars for one of their elite tails. If you add in the elite monofin, which is what they recommend for their elite tails, the shipping goes from $277 to $351. So yeah, it's a little crazy. If you're looking at their apparel, there is not many options for adults. In fact, the only one I could actually find was their leggings. Everything else is made for kids. But if you're looking at their leggings, $46 for a pair of leggings Australian, and shipping is 189 Australian dollars. So if you want one pair of leggings from Fin Fun, it's going to cost you $235. Now onto the monofins. These are in a separate section because often you just buy them separately and from different places, so I thought I would talk about 3 of the most popular ones, give you a bit of an idea of where you can get them and how much the shipping will be. So the Fantasy Fin 1, this is the Mertailor original monofin that they did. Like I said, they have about 5 designs, I think. The Fantasy Fin 1, I believe, is the lightest. So this is probably the cheapest one you're gonna get. As they go up, obviously the price of the monofin goes up a lot, and then also the shipping costs will go up because they're a lot heavier. So if you're looking at a Fantasy Fin 1, they cost $199 US, and shipping is $243 US, which brings your total to $442 US, which is $672 Australian dollars for the Fantasy Fin 1 monofin. I've had one of these fins. I personally do not think it's worth it, but obviously you do you, make your own choices. The next monofin is the Linden. This is probably one of the most popular choices on the market at the moment. I looked at these on Amazon. I don't believe Mermaid Linden sells them directly through her website, but sometimes you can find on sellers as well. From Amazon, they're $183 and they have free delivery, so that's exciting. Obviously this probably depends on the seller and the distributor and stuff, but that was the first one that I found. Then the Mahina monofin, which is a very OG monofin, is also still very, very popular. On their own website is $120 US, and then $45 US shipping. So that brings the total to $165 US, which is 250 Australian dollars. This is pretty decent actually. It's a really good fin. I feel like it's probably actually worth that cost, and being able to get it straight from the Mahina website is nice as well. I do believe that Whimsydale Mermaid often sells monofins as well, so if you're looking for a good deal, that's probably a good place to start. At the moment, I believe they are out of stock of most of their regular ones, and they have a couple of like secondhand limited stock ones, so go check that out if you want, but could be worth keeping an eye on their website in case they restock in a fin that you want to get and you don't want to pay the international shipping. So that is it. That is a breakdown of the shipping costs to get a mermaid tail in Australia. If you're not Australian and you're watching this, please have some sympathy for us because it's very expensive being a mermaid down under. And if you are Australian, I hope that this was helpful and maybe, you know, saves you a bit of time researching on your own, because it can be really hard to try and find a tail that's within your budget. And you look at the regular price of the tail and you're like, oh, I could afford that, and you chuck it in your basket, and then you go to check out and then the price of shipping is more than the tail itself, and it makes you very, very sad. So hopefully this will just give you a little bit of a heads up on some of the shipping costs that you might be expecting from some of these mermaid tail companies. Thanks so much for watching today, guys. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe, and keep an eye out for the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!